Tonight's a very exciting night. We're here in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, too. And we have a holiday called Tu'BiSHVAT. And for many people, Tu'BiSHVAT is known as a day which is the Rosh Hashanah for the trees.
Which it is.
But for many of us, we go back to our elementary school years, and we know the Ivrit teachers would always go wild on Tu'BiSHVAT. There would always be that song in the background playing, Tu'BiSHVAT Higia Chaga Ilanot. And the Rebbeim really, if they ever spoke about Tu'BiSHVAT, the only thing they would say is that we don't say Tachnun in Tu'BiSHVAT. And the question really is, what is Tu'BiSHVAT all about? I heard earlier today, there was a Rav of a shul that was speaking after Shachris, and he said that Chazal tell us there's an inyan to increase our Torah learning on Tu'BiSHVAT. So we see that it has more significance than just planting a tree in Eretz Yisrael. We see it has more significance than that. And I wanted to speak about what the avoda of the day is. And I can tell you that it's similar to Tu B'Av, but there are differences. And for right now, I don't remember the differences, but I do remember Tu B'Av. Let's speak about Tu B'Av, and we're going to come back to Tu'BiSHVAT. The avoda of Tu B'Av, Lag BaOmer, is also similar. These are all the things that happened in the Mishnah, which we're not going to mention right now, because we're just going to speak about what the day is all about. These are things which limited potential, which we became aware of how unlimited it is. It's a day where people could have a special siyata d'shmaya in developing hope in things that perhaps they were hopeless about. Perhaps a project started on a day like Tu B'Av or Tu'BiSHVAT, a project that a person always thought they would never be able to do, perhaps going through Shas, perhaps something like that. On a day like Tu'BiSHVAT, a person could become aware of koichos, of talents they never knew they had, abilities that they never thought they would ever be able to do. On this day, a person could find out that in reality they could really do things they never thought they could do. And we find this many times. We find examples like this of people that they didn't necessarily seem so smart. They went on and they applied themselves to Torah, and they ended up becoming a tremendous Talmid Chacham. So we find it in Torah learning. We find it in other things as well. A little bit of a different situation where you have sometimes an old lady that picks up a car to save someone's life. Really, they don't really have such a koyach. But I don't really think the Tu B'Av or Tu'BiSHVAT is referring to that. Okay. The question on that is, if what I'm saying is true, then we have the following test to see if it's true.
Why is this boiling?
I don't know. We have something boiling. We have something which one would have thought was water, but it's turning into a gas. It's water vapor. So too, a person might think it's just water, but a person could become a talent that they might think it's just this, but really with that talent, they can make it that. They might think they only have the ability to say over a weather forecast. But really, they could utilize those same kochos, the kochos of someone's interested in weather. They have a weather podcast, and they invest a lot of kochos into that. In reality, perhaps if they invest those kochos into learning, perhaps they could become great in learning. So, the only thing is like this. If what we're saying is true, so we go back to Rav Kalman Weinreb Zatzal. He was nifter this past year. He used to always say that the physical world is a reflection of the spiritual world. So if what I'm saying is true, if what I'm saying is that it's a day where we could discover things that appear to be hopeless, and all of a sudden we could see that it actually is, we're full of hope. Do we find this in the physical world? Do we see it? And I wanted to suggest that actually, not only do we see it, There's no better day on the Jewish calendar than this day, Tu'BiSHVAT. And we're going to speak about the English calendar in just a moment as well. Tu'BiSHVAT, all of these Ivrit teachers, the teachers that speak Hebrew, they grew up in Israel, they'll all tell you that what Tu'BiSHVAT represents, I remember learning they would say that you could smell spring in the air. It's a day where maybe it's not spring yet, but in Eretz Yisrael, about 30 degrees north latitude, spring, you could start to smell it in the air. I'll tell you another thing. It's interesting, but here in America, there's something known, the New York Times speaks about this, and the New York Times would speak about how every year in January, here in the United States, in the middle latitudes, there's something called the January thaw, which is totally amazing. I don't think there's any scientific reason for it. But I remember the dates. I remember when I read this article, the dates were January 23rd to January 27th. Every year, it's not really every year. And in Chicago, we feel it, but not as much as places like further to the south. In St. Louis, Missouri, you feel it really strongly. But this year also, right now, today's date, English date, is January 24th. And we are right now in the middle of a tremendous thaw. Temperatures were below zero last week, full of snow. And temperatures expected to be in the 40s here in Chicago all week. Temperatures even going into the 50s today in St. Louis, Missouri. So there's definitely a thaw. And Tu'BiSHVAT falls out during this time. So I don't know how often. The question is, how often does Tu'BiSHVAT fall out during the January thaw? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But the January thaw also, that is something similar, I think. If you were to describe, what does it mean to smell spring in the air, but at the same time you're in the middle of winter? So being that we're not in Israel, it would be hard to relate. But I think perhaps the closest thing we could get over here is when we're living a real winter, not an El Nino winter, and a real winter, and then comes the January thaw. And it reminds us that spring is around the corner. Then after January 27th, the cold air comes back. Okay, so we see that in the physical world, what appears to be hopeless, nothing could be more hopeless, nothing could appear more hopeless than walking outside in the middle of winter. We're re-recording this because the first time it wasn't being recorded, for people who are wondering. Walking outside in the middle of winter, and you could almost swear that these trees are as dead as can be. The temperature in Chicago was below zero last week. There's not one leaf on any tree. It's not possible for these trees to still be alive. And if anyone was to tell you that there's going to come a time where there's going to be flowers and leaves on these trees, if someone didn't know better, they would think the guy's nuts. Who could survive such a thing? We find that winter is a situation of total hopelessness, but the hope appears. And that's exactly what Tu'BiSHVAT is all about. And that's what, in Israel, as we say, you could smell the spring. Tu'BiSHVAT is all about a situation where you could swear everything is dead. All the plants are dead, but comes Tu'BiSHVAT and you become aware. Perhaps the flowers have not come yet, but you become aware that these things are coming, that the trees are actually not dead. Just like in the physical world, whatever we see, that's so true in our ruchnias as well. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't hide secrets. There's a physical world for a reason. Hashem's giving us a message. You see what you see outside, that's what you're supposed to be doing inside, on your neshama. Your neshama, the parts of your neshama that you think are dead, the parts of you that you think you're stuck, you're not that person. You're never going to be able we'll pick certain things, never be able to shmir salashon, or tefillah b'tzibur, or kedusha, or I'm just picking things that you might, or different things. And I don't know if it's true or not true, but what we're saying right now is that to the same extent that the trees appear dead, and then we become aware that in reality they're not dead, so too things which appear dead at this time, it's a reminder that in reality it may very well not be dead. I want to add on one more thing, but it's going to limit this to some extent. But I'm just going to say this is especially true regarding a talent that a person used to have, but they questioned it, and they think they don't really have it. Because these trees, they used to be alive. Now they're dead. But now we see they're going to come back to life again. So if we were to make a perfect parallel, that would be the perfect parallel. There would be, not that a person could become Superman, but maybe they could become Superman. Maybe they really could become something that they never thought they could become. But it's especially true by talents that a person maybe declined many years ago. Maybe a teacher talked them out of it and said they're a horrible artist. But if they had that feeling that they're a good artist, there's a reason Hashem gave them that feeling. And maybe in reality, they are the good artists. So Tu'BiSHVAT is a day in our Ruchnius, and perhaps even artists, you can connect it to Ruchnius. That's what the day is all about. So we just explained a possible Mahalach in Ruchnius. And we also explained how the exact same thing is happening in the physical world. Now the question is, where do the 6 weeks come from? So we know in the Gemara, they don't mention the English dates usually, but the English dates are the solar year, and weather works according to the solar year. So what the Gemara does, first of all, regarding the lunar year, we did point out that the gravitational pull might be able to change some weather patterns. It's a hypothesis. And we said that when there's a new moon, this year we set it a month in advance, that it was a mild winter, but I suggested that when we have a new moon, there might be an Arctic outbreak, and that's exactly what happened. But in general, it's really, when it comes to weather, we know it's the solar months. The only time that the Jewish calendar seems to recognize that in halacha, in the actual Jewish law, is by the halacha of saying v'sein tal umatar in the middle of Shemona Esrei. That's something that we start to say either December 4th or December 5th at Mariv. It happens to be the coldest 90-day period of the year starts December 5th. It's not December 21st, so it's really right on. Okay. But, again, in general, we just try to match up the Jewish lunar months as best as we can to winter. So the winter months are considered Kislev and Teves. Those are the winter months. Shvat and Adar is a different season. Every 2 months is its own season. So right. In the English calendar, we have 4 seasons, but according to Chazal, I hope you're okay. But according to Chazal, there's actually 6 seasons. So, and I don't know the name of each one. There's a book, Seasons of Life, actually was written by Nosson Slifkin that I read when I was in 12th grade, and he explains this very, very well. Totally amazing. So if you want to know more about it, you can go to the book, Seasons of Life, and every single month he takes you through exactly what the avoda is. It's a tremendous, tremendous book. It's in English, so I'm calling it a book, but really it's a sefer, I would say. So we have Kislev and Teves, Shvat and Adar, Nisan and Iyar. I remember Iyar was a month of health. Then Av and Tammuz, Elul and Tishrei. So I might be off here because Cheshvan and Kislev, maybe it's Teves. So it's a 2-month period. So where do we come up with? So the 6 weeks would be, so the Tu'BiSHVAT is the 15th of Shvat. So 6 weeks, the 1st of Nisan. So the 1st of Nisan would be considered spring. That would be considered spring. So Tu'BiSHVAT reminds us that we're only 6 weeks away from spring, and in some places you could even smell spring in the air. Okay, now, with that being said, now we're going to go to the Parsha. There's the Yesod that Rabbi Berger, the Rosh Yeshiva of one of the yeshivas I learned at, who was a Talmud of Moshe Shapiro, who said that all current events in the world could be found in the Parshas HaShavua, the Parsha that's read that day. Not only that, it could be found in the Aliyah that corresponds to that day. So, if that's true, either Tu'BiSHVAT or the Avoda of Tu'BiSHVAT will be found in the Parshas HaShavua of today in Chamishi. So, let's go. We're going to read it for the first time, and we'll see what's in there, and then we'll figure it out. Okay, so Dovi's going to tell us what the Parshas HaShavua is this week. This is, of course, the most exciting part, because this is the part which could end up being a bust. This could slug up the whole shir. If we can't find it, then we have a big problem. Okay, let's go. And the standard's a little bit weird today, but we're going to go. I'm going to read it in English from Rav Aryeh Kaplan. Then we're going to actually have to start before so that we know what's going on. We read this actually. Miriam, the prophetess, right now we're in Revi. Miriam, the prophetess, our own sister, took the drum in her hand. And I need everyone to think, everyone has to be creative and come up with a way we can connect this to Tu'BiSHVAT, but we're not in Chamisha yet. Miriam, the prophetess, our own sister, took the drum in her hand. And by the way, if we can connect it to the Parsha, even if it's not Chamishi, that's also something.
It's like Tu'BiSHVAT, what you just talked about.
Which, by the way, nothing could say better than Kriyas Yamsuf. I mean, that's in this week's Parsha. Kriyas Yamsuf is exactly that. You run into the ocean, the sea, you're going to die. You're going to drown. It's hopeless. But then, all of a sudden, it splits. So, I mean, there's nothing in Kol Torah Kula, actually, that speaks about this more than this week's Parsha. Isn't that amazing? The women followed her with drums and dancing. Miriam led them in the response. Hashem, sing to Hashem for his great victory. Horse and rider he cast in the sea. Moshe led the Israelites, and we go into the bitter waters, away from the Red Sea, and they went out into the shore desert. Again, we're about to go through a hopeless situation. There's no water. They're in the desert. Finally, they came to Marah, but they cannot drink any water there. The water was bitter. And that was why the place was called Marah. The people complained to Moshe, "What shall we drink?" they demanded. When Moshe cried out to Hashem, he showed him a certain tree. Oh, a tree. Tu'BiSHVAT. A tree. We have a tree. What other parsha do we have a tree? Do we have a tree in any other parsha?
No.
Maybe by Bereshis, we have Hashem maybe made the trees. We have a tree. He showed him a certain tree, and people are planting trees in Tu'BiSHVAT. Moshe threw it into the water, and the water became drinkable. Oh, it was totally hopeless. It's super bitter. But it became, if it's just hopeless, there's no hope. But if it's super hopeless, then there's hope. But it's actually true. If a situation's hopeless, people tend to go to doctors, and they try to find hope. But if it's super hopeless, they just turn to Hashem. That's it. It's like, and that's the issue. Yosef Hatzadik, when he was in jail, people say, "What did he do wrong?" At the end, you're supposed to do your hishtadlus. He told him, "Remember me," when you go to Paro. Because of those 2 words, he got 2 extra years of jail. But the thing is, Yosef's situation was not just hopeless; it was super hopeless. So when you're in super hopeless, you just have to turn to Hashem, because nothing else is going to make any sense. Super hopeless, it's usually, that means the avoda is Hashem wants you to turn to him. Or if it's just hopeless, you keep running from doctor to doctor, and maybe, of course, it's best to go straight to Hashem, but a lot of times people are not holding on that level. But so the people complained to Moshe.
I forgot to say the Vayomer and everything else. So when I finished saying it, I actually was starting to feel better. That actually did happen.
Okay, cool. You started to say Vayomer in the Kriya Shema Lamita? Mm-hmm. And then you started to feel better. When Moshe cried out to Hashem, he showed him a certain tree. Moshe threw it into the water, I see there's a little asterisk here, but some say it might have been a piece of wood. It is said to be a fig, pomegranate, or oleander. Some write that they also purged the well by pouring out large amounts of water from it. But the Pasha thing, that Rav Aryeh Kaplan, he translated it as a tree. Moshe threw it into the water, and the water became drinkable. It was there that Hashem taught them survival techniques and methods, and there he tested them. So he's teaching them things which, how are you going to survive? I never even saw that before. What is the Hebrew for that? It was there that he taught them survival. Okay, so it's being, there he taught him. Rav Aryeh Kaplan incorporates Torah Sheba'al Peh into the translation over here, and some poskim say actually that as English translation is so accurate, you could be Yotzei Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum with it, and this is the only translation I've ever heard that said about. So it's Hashem's teaching them survival techniques, situations where they would die. They're now learning how to. It's almost like learning how to swim. And methods. And there he tested them. He said, if you obey Hashem your Lord, and do what is upright in his eyes, carefully heeding all his commandments and keeping all his decrees, then I will not strike you with any of the sicknesses that I brought on Egypt. I am God who heals you. Okay, we're getting close to Chamishi. We're at Chamishi now. Okay? Then, so by the way, Revi'i, already in the afternoon of Yom Revi'i, we did not say Tachlan today, by Mincha. So there already was a Ruach of Tu'BiSHVAT this afternoon. So Revi'i, there already is something to be said by Revi'i. And there's also something to be said by Rishon, because tomorrow morning there's going to be a Kriyas HaTorah, because we learn the Torah on Thursday. And this Thursday, because it's Thursday, we're going to be learning Rishon. So it's also something we want to take a look at, what happened in the first Aliyah. Okay, but right now we're holding by the fifth Aliyah. Then they came to Elim. Here, there were 12 springs of water and 70 date palms. They then camped by the water. They moved...
Abba,
yeah.
I have a question. Why do we need to know exactly how much of what? It could just say there was that and there was that. It doesn't need to say there was this much of this and this much of this. Why does it need to say
All right, very good question. And offhand, I don't know the answer. I do know if the other time we hear 12 is by the 12 Shvatim, and maybe there's some type of connection, but I don't know what it is, and we would have to think about it. Maybe each Shevet had one spring of water. The 70 date palms. 70 date palms. So there must be something mystical or something deep going on. They camped along the Red Sea. Well, we'll have to open up a Mikra Gedolos and look at it. Why does it say 70 date palms? They moved on from Elim, and the entire community of Klal Yisrael came to the Sinai, the Sin desert. This is the plain along the edge of the Sinai plateau, called Debet Er Ramla. Let's look at the Hebrew here. Avayisu me Elim vayevo kol adas b'nei Yisrael midbar Sin asher ben Elim uvein Sinai. So it sounds almost like Sinai, but it's not. It's Sin between Elim and Sinai. It was the 15th. This is unbelievable. It was the 15th of the second month after they had left Egypt. Okay? So today's the 15th. Tu'BiSHVAT's the 15th of Shvat. Okay? That's the second month of winter. If I have it right. The second month of winter. It was the 15th of the second month after they had left Mitzrayim.
15th.
If anyone wanted to know, listen, we have trees, we have hopeless becoming hopeful, people are dancing with women, with drums, and this is unbelievable.
Super hopeless, that becomes not hopeless.
This is unbelievable what's going on here. Okay.
This is one of the most amazing parts.
Okay, and it was not prepared beforehand. I thought this would be a challenge, actually. I thought we would have to think about it, but no, it's right in front of our face. There in the desert, the entire Jewish community began to complain against Moshe and Aaron, Klal Yisrael said to them, if only we had died by Hashem's hand in Egypt. Okay, they did that. There at least we could sit by pots of meat and eat our fill of bread. But you had to bring us out to this desert to kill the entire community by starvation. Hashem, I was still in Chamishi. Hashem said to Moshe, I will make bread rain down to you from the sky. This is like, if you ever thought bread could come down from the sky, that's hopeless. That will never happen, but it's happening. Okay, so anything could happen. You think you can't do something, you have to ask Hashem.
Right now.
You always have to ask Hashem, could I do it, could I not do it? Maybe you're right, maybe you're not right. Yeah?
Everything is just like what's happening right now. Total hopeless. Everything,
Right.
If there's something hopeless and it actually happens, someone says, oh, the trees are alive right now, it's totally hopeless, and if they actually are, then there has to be an ace.
So I would say if there's anything that a person has a passion for, something they want to do in life, but there's some type of technicality that's making it impossible for them to do it, just do it anyways, and things will work out. So the people will go out and gather enough for each day. I will test them to see whether or not they will keep my law. On Friday, which Dovi spoke about before, the gathering, on Friday they will have to prepare what they bring home. It will be twice as much as they gather every other day. Moshe and Aaron said to Klal Yisrael, when evening comes, you will know that it was God who took you out of Mitzrayim. And in the morning, you will see God's glory. He has heard your complaints which are against Hashem. After all, what are we that you should complain against us? Moshe said in the evening, I will tell you one more thing. So this morning after Shachris, I was davening in a shul, Rabbi Yitzchak spoke, and he said the Chazal tell us there's an Indian to increase our Torah learning on Tu'BiSHVAT. Over here, there's a Chazal that tells us what was this water and what was this eitz. So Moshe Rabbeinu, says sometimes when a yeshiva bacher who loved learning, they come home for Bein Hazmanim, they have a weekend off, and they come back to yeshiva, and they can't get into it again. So what's the pshat? So when I was in Ner Yisrael, Rav Kalman Weinreb, when he spoke, he used to say, Zatzal, he would say, it's because when a person goes 3 days without learning, the Torah becomes bitter to them. Torah is compared to water. They went 3 days without water. At this time, Moshe Rabbeinu was masaken that Klal Yisrael should never again go 3 days without Torah. That's why we learn the Torah every Monday and Thursday. This goes all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu, so that we will never go
Every
3
Shabbos.
days. Right. And so there's never, the most there ever is 2 days. Tuesday and Wednesday, that's the most. Because Thursday to Shabbos, you just have Friday. Shabbos to Monday, you just have Sunday. So the most you ever have is 2 days. So the question then is, okay, the Torah is bitter. What is the solution? The solution is to do exactly what Moshe did. What is this eitz? This is the eitz chayim hi. That's Torah. Eitz chayim hi. Torah is an eitz chayim, a tree of life, to those that grab onto it. And what's the solution? You just throw yourself into the learning. It's bitter. Do it anyways, and the Torah will become sweet again. So we're saying that Tu'BiSHVAT, a person's supposed to increase their learning, and perhaps a person will say, I don't feel like it. The Torah is bitter. Well, just throw yourself into it. And it is a day where the trees are judged, and eitz is also a name for tree. Eitz is also Torah. Perhaps that's where it comes from. And okay, so we have that's another connection here. Okay, so now we go, according to that, let's see if this makes sense, by the way. There were 12 springs of water and 70 date palms. Chazal tell us that for each pasuk in the Torah, there's 70 different ways to learn the pasuk.
I remember learning that with you.
So there's something called Sod, Kabbalah, Pshat. There's 70 different ways. I think, I don't know, but if we were to look into this, there probably is some connection between
And
this
12
and the
what?
70 ways, and then the 12. I don't know. We have to think about it. We have to look into it. Maybe yes, maybe no. But we'll go on over here. Maybe. I just thought of something else. We're told there's 70 languages I think 70 languages that people in Sanhedrin had to know. And a thought occurred to me a couple weeks ago. So I have found sometimes when a person gets burnt out from davening in Hebrew, even though Hebrew is so beautiful, but sometimes if they, just for a day, they daven in a different language, in English, and then they go back to Hebrew, or perhaps any time a person gets burnt out, perhaps just do it a little bit differently. Klal Yisrael, it was bitter. The water was bitter. So we said, just throw yourself into Torah. Perhaps if that doesn't work, try one of the 70 languages and then go back to it. Maybe something will come out of that. But this is, the Pashup shot here is that there were 70 date palms and we don't really know the significance of it. Okay. Now it was the 15th of the second month after they had left Egypt. They're in the desert. We did all that. Moshe and Aaron said to Klal Yisrael, when evening comes, you will know that it was Hashem who took you out of Mitzrayim. And in the morning you will see Hashem's glory. He has heard your complaints. Okay, he has heard your complaints which are against Hashem. After all, what are we that you should complain against us? Moshe said, in the evening Hashem will give you meat to eat. Here we have meat to eat, but that's... And in the morning there will be enough bread to fill you up. Hashem has heard your complaints, which you are actually addressing against him. What are we? So we find over here, Moshe and Aaron said this, and then Moshe kind of repeated it. Your complaints are not against us, but they are against Hashem. Moshe said to Aaron, tell the entire Klal Yisrael community to gather before Hashem, for he has heard your complaints. When Aaron spoke to the entire Klal Yisrael, they turned toward the desert. Hashem's glory was visible in the clouds. That brings the fifth aliyah to an end. Okay, so we said a lot of interesting things, and thank you for listening. Thank you to my Talmidim over here. May we be zoicha, may Kodesh Baruch Hu bench all of us. May bless all of us that we should utilize this Tu'BiSHVAT to the best of our ability. Hashem should guide us to know what he wants from us. And nothing could be greater in unleashing koichos than Mashiach. Nothing could be greater than that. Even if that doesn't happen, chas v'shalom, but may in our own life, to whatever extent it could happen, may Hashem help this happen today. So there's actually something called Shas for Shidduchim in Chicago, where they spend much of the day learning Torah. But there's also, every person has their own chelek in Torah, where they could become, Hashem could guide us, and may Hashem guide us to our chelek, where we will, to our chelek, that's something that we could have more access to our kochos on Tu'BiSHVAT, and not just learning, perhaps this is my chelek, to find where things are in the Parsha.
And there's another thing that you should know. You should always practice your talents. It's like if your talent is drawing, you should always practice your talents. Even if it's Torah, you should still practice your talents.
Okay, right. And in fact, there's a story that we've said before of Rabbi Leichter. We're not going to say the whole story, but we're just going to get to the bottom line. Rabbi Leichter, he said a story when he was in yeshiva. The Rav Volba, the Mashkiach, made sure that he always played the keyboard or listened to music every day for 30 minutes, even if he didn't want to, because he knew that Rabbi Leichter, before he came to yeshiva, this was a special interest of his. And in Stark yeshivas, there's a taiva to stop doing it, to just be in the Beis Medrash all day, because that's what everybody else is doing, but Mashkiach made sure that he would do this. So Rabbi Leichter asked him, why? Why? This isn't learning. This is Bittul Torah.
Actually,
so
you could play the music.
Okay, you could play. But the Mashkiach said, I'll tell you like this. He said, yeah.
The music could be Torah.
Okay, right. But let's say it wasn't music. In this case, it was music. But he said, the thing is like this. There's going to come a day where you're going to find these kochos in Torah. Hashem gave you a special love and a talent in music. And there's going to come a time you're going to be able to find that talent in Torah. I don't know where it is. It's going to happen naturally. It's just going to happen one day. But until that day comes, it's important that you continue to have a connection to music, because if you don't, that talent is going to become crippled. You're going to lose the talent. And with that being said, let's focus again on Tu'BiSHVAT, because for many of us who are older, perhaps there were talents of ours that did become crippled. But perhaps on a day like Tu'BiSHVAT, we could be blessed with the siyata d'shmaya to bring that talent out again. And that would be exactly what the trees are. The trees used to have that talent. They used to have the flowers, but it became crippled. But on Tu'BiSHVAT, we become aware that spring is coming. Perhaps there's even some flowers that start blooming in some areas. There probably is. In Israel, probably. And with that... And if you want to know where he found it in Torah, you have to go and listen to that story, because I don't feel like saying it right now. And with that, we're going to end off again. And thank you for your interest. Everyone have a wonderful Tu'BiSHVAT, a wonderful week. And